Welcome back. I'm Barry Craig. One of the functions of a college in a democracy is to provide a place where people of goodwill can come together and discuss or debate issues that are complex and controversial and consequential. Recently, we had a notebook program dealing with the conflict in Iraq, which I believe would certainly fit that definition of complex, controversial, and consequential. In that spirit, we decided to produce a program on the controversy over GNEP at the atomic plant here in Paducah. We were able to line up rather quickly a person who has been rather outspoken in his opposition to this facility, Mark Donham, lives across the creek in southern Illinois. We attempted to line up someone from the pro side, the supporters. And after repeated telephone calls, we had no success. I also enlisted the help of two of my colleagues. They too came up empty-handed. So instead of having a debate or a discussion about this issue, Mr. Donham, the floor will be yours. However, I want to make this offer at the beginning of the program and at the end of the program. Supporters of GNEP, we want you on the show. You can contact me, 270-534-3270. I assure you, you will have your day. You can come by yourself. Mr. Donham has agreed to come back. So again, 534-3270. Well, the show must go on, and go on it will. Welcome to the program, Mr. Donham.
Thank you, Barry, for having me.
Let's begin. Before we get partisan, I'm going to ask you to put on your nonpartisan cap and explain to the viewers what GNEP is.
Well, GNEP is an acronym for the Global Nuclear Energy Partnership. And what the proposal is to take irradiated fuel rods that are being stored on site at the nuclear power plants where they were generated and to bring them to a location where a facility would be built that would reprocess those fuel rods and extract some of the materials from them and make them into fuel using a new technology, supposedly, that would require a whole new system of nuclear power plants that we would then locate around the world in countries that don't have nuclear power plants currently, and we would sell this reprocessed fuel to them.
Now, I'm assuming Paducah was chosen as a site because of the long history of the nuclear industry here.
Well, Paducah hasn't been chosen as the site. It's one of 11 sites that are applying.
Right, hoping for consideration.
Right.
Correct, I misspoke, right. And again, that would be because of the tradition of the nuclear industry here that Paducah has applied and made a big effort.
Well, I think that some of the community leaders are foreseeing the closing of the enrichment facilities and think that this might be a way to move these workers into another similar job.
You mentioned jobs. I have with me a publication of www.paducahgnep.com, their website, and it says 10 reasons to locate the Global Nuclear Energy Partnership in Western Kentucky. Let me read a paragraph from an article authored by Van Newberry, who's the judge executive of McCracken County, and authored by William F. Paxton, the mayor of Paducah. Their names are on this. And it says, and I quote, "The GNEP recycling plant alone would result in an estimated investment of $12 to $16 billion, bring 5,000 construction jobs, and result in more than 1,000 full-time jobs for the region." Those are pretty impressive numbers.
Well, 12 to 16 billion dollars of taxpayers' money. And if 12 to 16 billion dollars of taxpayers' money is invested in just about anything, you're going to be able to create jobs and build facilities. So, sure, if the federal government offered to spend 12 to 16 billion dollars to invest in our region, who wouldn't want to have interest in it? The question is, what are we going to invest that 12 to 16 billion dollars in? And this proposal that they're saying is clearly not the best way that money could be spent.
The jobs also, I mean, 5,000 construction jobs, that'd be an enormous project. That's a lot of people on the payroll.
Well, you could create jobs building photovoltaic panels or and equipping houses. They make roofing now that is our photovoltaic panels. And if the government would subsidize people to have the south-facing roofs of their houses to have these photovoltaic panels and pay for the electronic machinery to hook into the grid, I mean, there's other alternatives other than just creating more nuclear waste.
Now, by photovoltaic, that's solar energy.
Right, where you have a panel that you put in the sun, and when the sun strikes it, it produces electricity. Mm-hmm. And yes, there is some environmental effect in getting the minerals, the silica, and then manufacturing the panels. But once you manufacture them, they create electricity without any pollution.
Mm-hmm. 1,000 full-time jobs. The region has been devastated by the loss of industrial jobs. General Tire in Mayfield closed recently. 1,000 jobs, that sounds pretty appealing too.
Well, of course, everybody, I mean, I have a job, you need a job. So, that's one thing I agree with the other side on, is that jobs are good. But just because it's a job doesn't automatically mean that it's a good job. And the past history of the plant shows that there is a lot of not so good jobs, evidenced by the fact that now the government is paying settlements to workers at the plant, compensation for illnesses that are work-related. And as a matter of fact, it's my understanding that the list of workers that are eligible for this compensation is backlogged by thousands now, and the program's kind of in shambles.
Let me run a list of the 10 reasons and get your comments on each of them. Number 1, Paducah and McCracken County, Kentucky are in a centralized location within 600 miles of 50 of the nation's operating reactors, and if Paducah got this plant, they would be the ones sending in the fuel rods, I guess. The area has land, water, and air transportation modes, which significantly reduces DOE's spent fuel and product transportation cost.
Well, what they're talking about is transporting these spent fuel rods or irradiated fuel rods from all over the...
Well, explain what a fuel rod is to those of us who don't know much about nuclear power.
Well, when in these power plants, they make these bundles and they take uranium, which has been enriched at the facility here, and then fabricated into these rods. And and I don't know all of the exact formulas, but they have different kinds of substances that they put in with them to moderate the reaction. But if you put enough of enriched uranium close enough to each other, you cause a fission, a chain reaction, which will create heat. And they use that to boil water to make steam to turn electrical turbines. Mm-hmm. But these bundles, they only optimally produce heat for a certain amount of time, and then they have to take them out and put new ones in. But they're still highly radioactive. As a matter of fact, they're a lot more radioactive when they come out than they are when they go in. And they have to go into very serious containment. And but there is materials, or there are materials still in those bundles that can be used to create additional fission if that's what you want to do. So that's what they're talking about doing. Mm-hmm. But I would debate the use of the term recycling with this, because after you use these, even if you reprocess these rods, you're still going to create high-level waste that's going to have to be treated. And there's various streams of high-level waste. For example, in the Department of Energy's environmental impact statement from 1995, where they analyzed the 17 major sites that DOE has already polluted and having to clean up, they talk about this West Valley, New York site, which is one of the 17 major sites and also is the only location in the United States of a commercial reprocessing facility that's been tried, and it operated for 6 years and created 430,000 gallons of high-level radioactive liquid waste, which had to be vitrified and is now stored on site, and it's part of a continuing, at this point, over $5 billion cleanup. It lost money and closed down after 6 years because it was economically not viable.
Number 2, Paducah, Kentucky, McCracken County, Western Kentucky, your neck of the woods, Southern Illinois, and Southeast Missouri have a fully qualified and Nuclear Regulatory Commission experienced workforce of 2,000 people.
Well, I mean, that's probably a fact. I mean, I don't know about whether everything's nuclear regulatory compliant or whatever, but though, I mean, yeah. But what does that mean? Does that mean that's all that they can do is work in nuclear? Or can they be trained to do better kinds of energy production?
Number 3, the only operational uranium conversion plant in the United States is located just 2 miles across the Ohio River in Southern Illinois. So the argument is this stuff's already here.
Well, it is already here. But this will have little to do with the uranium conversion plant. As a matter of fact, they'll be in competition with each other. Because the materials that are being produced out of the Honeywell facility in Metropolis, that's virgin uranium, and the uranium-driven nuclear power plants, which is what we have now, the fuel that will be produced through this reprocessing won't be able to be used in the current nuclear power plants, and one of the reasons why it's probably never going to go anywhere is because the cost of this reprocessing is not anywhere near competitive with what it takes to process raw uranium. But the two processes, they have nothing to do with each other. The conversion plant in Metropolis produces uranium hexafluoride, which the Paducah facility then enriches, which then goes into uranium fuel rods to go into the existing power plants, whereas this facility is going to be producing a brand new fuel for brand new power plants.
Well, so they'll have to retool old plants or build new ones?
No, they're talking, the proposal is to build a whole new series of new plants using a slightly different kind of nuclear reactor.
So an old plant, a nuclear plant, would just become obsolete?
No, it would continue to be operated probably by the fuel cycle that currently exists. But this is not this isn't to create fuel as a substitute for what's running our nuclear power plants now.
Oh.
And that's one of the kind of scary things, because when they had the hearing at the Executive Inn, the Department of Energy showed a videotape, and they had a map of the world, and some of the places that they were kind of suggesting that where they build these plants are countries that don't have nuclear facilities right now, because if they already have them, they're going to be using the existing fuel cycle. So they build them in places where they don't exist. Well, a lot of that is more or less third world, or what we call third world countries. And those aren't always the most stable governments, and that's not the kind of place where we want to be sending these highly radioactive materials where they don't exist now. That meets the definition of proliferation, in my opinion.
Number 4, the Paducah Gaseous Diffusion Plant, PGDP, is the only operational uranium enrichment plant in the United States. And I'm sure that would be a hook to bring it in, that we have
again,
experience here.
well, of course, they claim that it's going to close in 2010 or 2011. I don't know whether it's going to close or not, but until I don't think the country is going to close its only uranium enrichment plant. That's a whole other discussion as to where the world is going with nuclear materials, but probably the United States is not going to close down its production. There is movement to, of course, USEC is trying to get using the centrifuge technology, a new enrichment plant built at Piketon, Ohio. But a private company, LES, is also racing them to get one built out in New Mexico. So whoever happens to get all their licenses and get built first will probably take that over, and then perhaps this plant will close. But really, again, it's not really relevant to this discussion, because the two facilities would, assuming that the Paducah gaseous diffusion plant would continue to operate, they're going to be in competition with each other.
Point 5 is, we've discussed this already, the money, the jobs. Point 6, and we talked about this a bit before the program, unqualified support from the governor of the Commonwealth of Kentucky. Governor Ernie Fletcher is fully cognizant of spent nuclear fuel storage at Paducah.
Well, back several months ago, when this first came out in the Paducah Sun, I was interviewed by WKYX, and I had put out a little press statement expressing concern about it and asking some questions, and WKYX called me up and interviewed me. And then when they played it the next morning, they also had gone and called the governor, and they had gotten a statement from his spokesperson, and I recall that he said that the governor was going to support the study, but that he had a lot of questions about the actual project. I don't recall ever seeing a statement. Now maybe it's out there and I just haven't seen it, but my recollection of the one public statement that I've ever seen or heard from the governor was that he had questions about the project, but only supported the study.
Number 7, the initiative has bipartisan Senate leadership support in Kentucky and Illinois. Senator Dick Durbin, Democrat of Illinois, Senator Mitch McConnell, Republican, Kentucky, and Senator Jim Bunning, Republican, Kentucky. There's been some new developments on that front with regard to Senator Durbin. Tell us about that.
Well, it's been reported the last 2 days in the Paducah Sun that Senator Durbin is actually not in favor of the project. That I think officially he is undecided on, although he's written a letter to the task force in Paducah that's pushing this, expressing some pretty serious concerns about some of the impacts of the project and some of the impacts of these past reprocessing projects.
Let me read you very quickly a paragraph from this letter. This is from Senator Richard J. Durbin of Illinois. Quote, While the employment and economic prospects of a major energy processing site just across the river from Massac County are appealing, I am concerned that we don't have adequate answers to pending questions of safety, viability, and security. I share your interest in making progress on the larger challenge of how to deal with the nuclear waste generated in our country, and I support aggressive research and development to address that challenge. Sounds almost like he's making your argument.
Well, I agree with what he says in that letter, except that I'm not undecided on it. I think we need to move out of nuclear power. Why should we accept a power generation source that creates this byproduct that is not only deadly, but is super expensive to deal with, and we really can't deal with it? The federal government has already spent over $11 billion with a B dollars to prepare the Yucca Mountain facility in Nevada to accept the high-level waste, these spent fuel rods. It's 90 miles from Las Vegas. It's out in the middle of a desert, in the middle of a big rock mountain where they've dug these tunnels through the mountain and these tunnels off the tunnels and then these holes in the rocks that are where these fuel bundles will go. And the Department of Energy was telling everybody for years and years, oh, we've got it figured out, this is the place, sunk all this public money into it, and now so many problems, falsified studies and inadequate and inaccurate assessments, and now it's nowhere close. They're saying, well, maybe it'll open in 2027. If it's not safe for Las Vegas, 90 miles away in the middle of a big rock mountain, how can it possibly be safe here just on the banks of a major river in an earthquake zone in a residential neighborhood within a few miles of fairly significant populations?
The last paragraph in Senator Durbin's letter, quote, until we have a greater assurance regarding the feasibility of the available technologies and the safeguards that will protect our safety and security, I am withholding judgment on whether a large reprocessing plant should be built at this time. I guess we're taken off the list, I suppose, after that. But again,
there's another site in Illinois that's one of the 11 sites up in Morris, Illinois, and as the letter points out, and this was new, I knew that they had built this reprocessing facility in Morris but never used it. But what I didn't realize, and what that letter points out, is that they actually, and this is one of the real dangers of becoming the location for it, is that site had spent fuel rods sent to it, which they're stuck with now, and they didn't reprocess. And the world already has a growing stockpile of plutonium from the reprocessing that's going on now. And if these nuclear power plants that are storing these rods, these irradiated rods on site now, they would like nothing better than to get some little crack in the door so that they could start shipping them off to someplace else. And as soon as they ship them off to someplace else, buddy, they're never going to take them back. And it's going to be a heck of a lot harder for the next place where they land to get rid of them. And Paducah site could end up with the bulk of the spent fuel rods in the country, and the plant could operate for a few years, have all kinds of problems, shut down. Paducah's stuck with storing these, which it's absolutely the worst site probably one of the worst sites in the country to think about long-term storage for these spent fuel rods because they're so highly radioactive.
But having said that, and even if you remove Senator Durbin from the list, almost every other politician in this end of the state supports this.
$12 to $16 billion. when you know they say we want the jobs. Well, who wouldn't want 12 to 16 billion dollars invested? I say to Senator McConnell and Bunning and Representative Whitfield, sure, go out there and get us 12 to 16 billion dollars to invest in our region, but not in this.
Number 8, the initiative has multi-state congressional support, Kentucky, Illinois, Missouri. We've addressed that. Number 9, the initiative has a world-class corporate partner, CH2M Hill, who is assisted by Honeywell and local small business nuclear consultants. What does that mean?
Well, CH2M Hill is one of the contractors for the Department of Energy out at the facility, and I had some encounters with them when I was chair of the Citizens Advisory Board for 6 years. And like they're a very large corporation, and they're pretty. They keep kind of a low profile, but they do a lot of this kind of consulting work. And I don't know all that much about CH2M Hill, but I know that they like most big companies like this, there's been some controversy surrounding them in other sites, and they were involved in some things like, for example, the maps, the contamination maps of the residential neighborhoods of private land around the facility that they put out and then pulled back. And they're a big multinational corporation that you know, that I've read articles recently that they've had been accused of retaliating against whistleblowers and things like that, which isn't that unusual in the big corporate world. But you know, to me, just because they're a big multinational corporation, that doesn't automatically mean that everything's great with them. But yeah, they are a huge company.
Point number 10, and we're almost out of time. The initiative has community development leadership support through the PUPAU Task Force, co-chaired by McCracken County Judge Executive Van Newberry and Paducah Mayor William F. Paxton. I know Mayor Paxton recently had a commentary on WKMS in support of this. Once again, overwhelming political support for this.
Well, it was interesting that at the public information meeting that was held here back a couple weeks ago by the PUPA, a woman from Lone Oak named Ann Fraley got up to speak, and she said that she sincerely believed that the public support in the community wasn't nearly what they were hyping it up to be. And I think that's right. I think there's a lot of people out there that really have serious questions about it, but there's been the proponents. They got $664,000 from the Department of Energy to do this, and they're really out there advocating strongly for it, and they create a climate when they get a lot of the quote community leaders in the Chamber of Commerce and such, and people tend to be kind of afraid to speak their mind if they're concerned. And so I don't believe that it's this overwhelming support that they're talking about. I think there's a lot of questions in the community myself, and there ought to be, because this is huge. We're talking about bringing all of the spent fuel rods from around the country to our area.
And we're out of time. My guest today was Mark Donham. For those of you who support this project, please give me a call. We'd love to have you on the show and present your side of this very important question to our region. 270-534-53270. I'm Barry Craig. We'll see you next time.